Good.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Random Trek. I am your fearful Captain Christopher Ingle, joined as always by my brave first officer, Brennan, the mystical bar. Brennan, how you doing this week?
This is going to be interesting.
Oh yeah. Haha. This week we're taking a look at Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 6, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. Kind of a long title for a Trek episode.
Hmm.
Yes.
Not as
This
long as for the world is hollow and I have touched the sky.
That is true. That is true.
Mhm.
But this one is both a favorite of mine and one that I absolutely hate watching. It's too, I will put it this way. It's like watching Schindler's List. You don't watch it for fun.
It's true.
You don't watch it for fun. What did you think of this one going into it?
Well, I remember this one
Mhm,
because you pointed that out last week.
mhm.
And I thought, oh boy,
Yeah.
ethical questions.
Mhm. That's when Trek's at its best, is when it questions ethics. I like it when
Hmm.
it questions ethics. So let's get right down into it today. All right. So when the episode opens, the Enterprise is en route to the planet Majalis. They receive a distress signal from a shuttlecraft that's under attack from another ship. The Enterprise manages to destroy the ship, and the shuttlecraft's passengers or personnel are transported aboard the ship. A boy who is known as the first servant, his father, who is also his physician, and the leader of the Magellans. I don't think they're the Magellans, but that's what I'm going to call them, the Magellans. Alora, who it turns out has a past history with Captain Pike
Who
when he
doesn't?
was
Hmm.
Lieutenant Pike. Lieutenant Pike actually saved her. Interesting enough, on the Blu-ray, we cannot do this, but I can't find it. But there's a deleted scene on the Blu-ray where we would have got to see Lieutenant Pike in a red shirt rescuing said Lady Alora. But that is only on the Blu-ray, and I do not have
This
that.
must have been during his not time with Captain Littell. Mhm.
Yeah, while he was on the Albatani, I believe. I think it was the
Yes.
Albatani. Anyway, um, so uh, and they had a bit of a relationship, bit of a fling. So
I
Pike
mean, she's a redhead, so I mean,
Pike does agree to take them back to Majalis. Um, the father, his name is Gamal. Gamal first makes an attempt actually while on the ship to fake his son's death. He wants to prevent him from being returned to the planet. We don't find this till a little later, but he's thwarted and finds out that the father merely hit him on Enterprise to try to throw off the scent. He's going to be doing what's called an ascension ceremony. This boy is going to ascend as the leader of the Magellans,
or the provider, I
the
suppose.
provider. That is true. Um, this boy is very smart, very intelligent, very aware. It's very interesting, but he's a boy nonetheless. In fact, we get to see a moment where he finds out about Mbenga's daughter and actually takes her out of stasis, and they have a
Hmm.
cute moment playing with each other that I really
Yeah.
adore in this. But all that aside, uh, Pike basically befriends the Magellans. They find out that there was this plot to steal the kid, but they successfully stop it from happening. So Pike is now trusted by the Magellans and Alora. So Pike is allowed to witness the ceremony of the ascension. They go into it's not the planet. It's a lot like Cloud City. They're floating above a molten lava filled planet. Um, so they're kind of in the core of this floating city. And when they get in there, they see a corpse being removed from this machine. That was the previous first servant, and it's a
Another
child.
kid. Another kid.
Pike
Yeah.
quickly realizes what is going on, and he's horrified and wants to stop it. but Pike is knocked out. The child is put into this machine and plugged in. And that is the last we see of this child. We go back to Alora's room, who explains that the knowledge and the neural energy from this child will feed their society's energy needs and its processing needs for decades. It'll go for quite a while. And if they don't, they risk their livelihood, their lifestyle, which is almost utopian. They risk it falling into the lava if they don't do this.
Floating city, kind of like in Bioshock Infinite.
Pike is absolutely mortified by this and leaves her. She wants him to stay. She kind of wants him to be by her side. So there was Majalis has a colony that was in on this. They have a colony that's away, that's suffering, but they were the ones who were trying to help take him away. Gamal,
They're an offshoot of the Magellans, and
right?
Gamal, and they're against this.
Gamal asks to be taken to the colony to reside there, as now his son is gone. But before he leaves, he gives Mbenga some information on a treatment, a medical treatment that he had developed on Magellan that might help his daughter. Well, unfortunately, we know that doesn't work out.
But people in this other colony are against what's happening. They're against on Magellan.
Yep. And he's hoping that in the future he is able to save future first servants. But this is a really interesting moment for Pike, where I think for the first time we see how alone Pike really is. It's really interesting. I want to start out by making a comparison here. It's story time with Captain Ingle, everybody. It's time for a good old-fashioned literature review.
Oh boy.
So this is inspired by a short story by Ursula K. Le Guin called The Ones Who Walk Away from a Malice. It's actually more of a psychological experiment, if you think about it, in morality. A thought experiment. The idea being that Omalis is this utopian world, and we open up on Metalis the first day of summer, and everything is happy and beautiful and wonderful. Everything's going on. Summer solstice is happening. Everyone's having a good time. Everything's great. Everything's perfect. There's no crime. There's no hunger. There's nothing except one thing. Deep underground at the bottom of the city is a room that is dark, dank, disgusting, in filth. And in order for everyone to be happy, there is one child that is chosen to stay in this room and to suffer for the sake of everyone else. And that's where this idea comes from, is this short story. The short story actually came out in 1974. I read it in college, I believe. I read this in college.
Le Guin is one of the great science fiction writers. Because of dealing with ethics and morality. Very interesting.
And people in that society don't find out about the truth until they're older. And though they're initially shocked and disgusted, they kind of go with it because the happiness to them works. Now, what's interesting about this is we're asking our question. Let's ask this question, and I think we could connect this to Star Trek right away. If an entire society is safe, fed, happy, taken care of at the cost of only one individual, in this case, does the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one?
I think that if we cast our minds to Star Trek 3, we see that Star Trek, in terms of ethics, is about the tug of war between the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many. And it's an interesting moral question, because I don't think there is an answer to it, and I think that that is one of the conundrums of human existence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this episode does a good job of posing that question. And I think that, let's cast our minds to Avengers Infinity War.
Mm-hmm.
If they had destroyed Vision, they would have been able to stop uh, Thanos from getting the Mind Stone.
Mm-hmm.
But are they willing to kill somebody for that sake? And I think that this is one of those great um, moral questions that doesn't have a pat answer.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a one size fits all answer.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, we see this with many episodes of Star Trek in movies. Insurrection,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Star Trek
How many
3.
does it take, Admiral, before it becomes wrong?
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So this poses a very interesting moral question. And so, in answer to your question, I have no answer because there isn't one. I don't think. Mhm.
I'm more on the side of Pike.
Well, yeah, I think I am
I
too in this case.
the thing that I believe in
In
is
this case, yes.
when we think on a biblical scale, we here on earth will never achieve the utopian ideals that we would hope for that are available in heaven or were in Eden in the beginning. It's never going
Yes.
to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's wrong of us to sacrifice an individual, especially a child, just for the sake of everyone else. Historically, there is only one individual who's ever been sacrificed that results in something more positive. And I don't mean to turn this into the religious hour, but
Well, this is where my mind went to.
Mhm.
Is the case of Christ. In his case, that does add a wrinkle to it.
But he knew what he was getting into. Now we could say
Exactly.
the same thing about the
Exactly.
child, but now I don't know about the Magellans. I don't know the
I'm not sure he
humanoids.
really knows what he's getting into.
I actually, funny enough, today with my students, my freshmen today, we were talking about Romeo and Juliet. And I broached the subject with them with an article about the development of the human brain and how teenage development, why we make brash and rush decisions that are emotionally based as teens. Why do we do that? And from a scientific perspective, we do not develop our prefrontal cortex fully until we are in our mid 20s. But what does develop quicker first is called the amygdala. And that is where emotional and impulse driven thought come from.
Mm-hmm.
And so that develops much sooner than the prefrontal cortex. And so what happens is combine hormones into that. We make brash decisions very quickly. This is a child who I would also assume was bred and groomed to believe that this was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
This kid had no idea what he was getting into, even if he was informed. He could have been easily manipulated to believe that his sacrifice was the right thing to do.
But
Christ was not a
clearly,
child.
seeing
Christ
that,
was a 30-something-year-old
yeah,
adult
33-year-old
who
man,
made
yeah.
a conscious decision on his own, knowing what he had to do.
Mm-hmm.
He let what happened happen to him. He could have fought back. He could have called miracles down. He could have done so much, and he didn't. But he was an adult. This is a child. A child cannot make those decisions. And to sacrifice the life of a child, to mold a child in that way, I feel for Pike. I feel I would defend that we do not have the
I
right
agree.
to pleasure, forgive the phrase, to pleasure ourselves at the cost of another. We don't. So this is a point where I would say, and this is interesting. They quoted Prime Directive applies that you can't interfere. We are not of the Federation. You can't interfere with us. Leave us alone. If you're not going to support us, you're against us. Please leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crap. I'm sorry, it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They needed to do something and do it right because
It would be the same, or not the same, but it would be similar to somebody saying, well, female circumcision is something they just do over there in Africa, so we shouldn't interfere. And as you see, the logic is flawed because that's an immoral thing. No matter what culture you belong to, it's not excusable. And so I think that
well, too
this is
many.
also a case of, yes, the Federation law says they can't interfere, but morally and ethically, I think they have a duty.
But then it really becomes the interesting question that is it the Federation's right to police the world, let's call it the
Good point.
galaxy?
Good
Is it the
point.
Federation's place to do that and to instill values that are very different?
Good point.
That is very, I'll call it Eurocentric from a historical perspective. That's very
it's
Eurocentric.
walking a fine line.
What you're talking of right there is the Inquisition. You're talking the Crusades. You're talking forced conversion. The conversion of Native Americans to Catholicism by Juniper Serra. That's what you're talking here when we step in. So you're right. There is no solid answer. I can tell you my personal instinct. If I were captain of that ship, I would have interfered, even at the risk of my commission.
I think I would have too. I think I would have too.
But I understand somebody not doing something from the perspective that it isn't their place. It isn't our right to tell them what to do. But that becomes the moral dilemma that's even greater into this, is that whose morals are the correct ones? Where's the cultural binding here that holds us all together? Are we all human? Are we all European? Or do we have a right to express ourselves in unique ways in our own way?
Yeah. And then it becomes the question of, at what point is it immoral what that other society does?
Thank you all for joining it. Thank you all for joining us for the philosophy hour here on Random Trek.
But you're absolutely right. This episode highlights the conundrum of such questions.
Yep. And what's interesting is Pike isn't given a chance much to do anything about it, which I appreciate. I appreciate the helplessness that Pike feels. It really gives him more bearing. Because we would sit here and go, well, why didn't he do that? He didn't have time. He had no chance. He was blinded by love to see what was really in front of him. And that the father, I am so surprised, since he was a part of this in the first place, that he didn't say something to begin with to Mbenga.
Good point.
That shocked me.
Good point.
Because if anybody would have been able to do something and be sly about it, it would have been Mbenga.
Yeah, certainly. Oh, yes.
But
nonetheless, I think that this is a great example of a moral question, the kinds of moral conundrums that Star Trek has always been good at presenting to us.
Yep.
Because on the flip side of this story, City on the Edge of Forever. One person dies to save the future.
See how complicated this tapestry goes?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But this is at the heart of some of the best issues in Star Trek. It is all about, do we interfere or do we not interfere?
And also the idea that sometimes the greatness of certain civilizations, quote unquote, great, quote unquote, greatness is built on the back of suffering.
Absolutely. I'm also reminded,
including our own.
I'm
including our own.
reminded of Enterprise when Trip met the progenitor. Do you remember that episode, the third gender?
Yes, yes.
And again, I think very similar.
Cogender.
Oh,
Cogender.
cogenitor. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm
Progenitor is
watching.
when, yeah.
I'm watching Discovery, and the
Yeah, so am I.
progenitors are
So am I.
the cogenitor.
Mhm.
Again, he questions the society and their standards and their rights, and from our perspective, he's not wrong. And yet there are nuances that he doesn't understand. And so is it his place or was it not his place? It continues, and this theme never gets old.
Yeah,
Because
that episode of Enterprise is basically Handmaid's Tale meets Enterprise.
But this kind of idea of where do we stand on the moral high ground? This is truly, to me, when Star Trek is at its best.
Yeah, I agree.
There is no right answer. There
Yep.
never will be a right answer. And I really enjoyed this episode. It's great to watch.
It's
I'll be
not
on.
fun to watch, but it's
I
great to
will.
watch.
Yeah. Again, it's like watching Schindler's List.
Yeah, it's excellent.
If I
It's
taught,
just not fun to
if I
watch.
ever taught this short story, I would show this episode
Yeah,
of Star Trek to go.
yeah.
This is so perfect
So.
for it. This is a high recommendation on my list.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
So
Any
thank you
final?
for tuning into our philosophy and religion class.
We don't get into these kind of details very often, because we want to have as many listeners of many different beliefs and structures, but it just feels so strong in terms of the theme that they were presenting here.
Yeah.
And it's deep at the heart. The prime directive itself is this question. Do we do something or do we not do something? When we talked about Stargate, same idea.
Yep.
Different approach.
Yep.
Same idea. Do we do something or do we not do something?
So,
final thought.
This is a good one. This is really worth watching.
Absolutely. The performances are fabulous. Pike gets one pulled over on him, which is rare.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. Fabulous episode. Watch it. Absolute recommendation.
And a cute redhead.
Yes.
Though,
all right, well,
as this episode ends, I'm not sure if I like her.
Oh, I don't like her either. But then again, at the same time, this is just her embracing her culture. Can we fault the scorpion for stinging? Can we fault the eagle for hunting? Can we?
Ooh, Scorpion, you just mentioned one of my favorite episodes.
I know. That was where I got the reference from.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But the point is, can we fault her for being part of her society and being who they are?
Yep.
All right. So next week, Commander Brennan is going to be away on shore leave for a week, enjoying the happiest place on Earth. So that leaves me. Well, I hope so. Unless the lines are long and it's really hot. I don't know.
Yeah.
Bring me back some popcorn.
We'll see.
We'll see. But next week, you will get a captain's log from me. I'm not sure what that captain's log is going to be about, but you'll get a captain's log from me, which is really great. I love the opportunity to do that. But the week after that, we are going forward over to the Bajoran wormhole and Deep Space Nine.
Well, but before that.
Are we before that?
No, Deep Space Nine is after another important episode.
No.
We're doing a movie and
well, the movie's at the end of the month.
It's in 3 weeks. So,
yeah, so yes. So,
am I getting my calendar mixed up?
Are getting your calendar mixed up. So next week we'll have a captain's log. Week after that, we'll have our episode of DS9 that I'll reveal in a minute. Week after that, which is the end of the month, we will be reviewing ET with a special guest of some kind. We are still looking for one.
Maybe ET himself. I don't know.
We will be doing ET. So, but all right, Deep Space Nine.
Oh boy, let's see what we get.
All right, Deep Space Nine. All right, so it looks like we are gonna get season 1 of Deep Space Nine.
Oh gosh.
Oh gosh, are you getting nervous?
Hoping for the good stuff, but let's see.
I'd like the good stuff. I'd like the good stuff too, but I never get that much luck.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to be taking a look. Oh, 1 second. It just recycled on me. Give me a second. There it is. There we go. Okay. Now I've got it. Season 1, episode 10. Move along home.
Oh no.
Ala Moraine counted.
No.
It's Ala Moraine. Oh, it is what it is. It is Move Along Home.
Mm.
You know what? I'm gonna be honest about this. Fans rate this as one of the worst Star Trek episodes. I'm gonna be honest. I like this episode. I don't love it, but I do like it.
I've never seen it all the way through, so
I do. But I'm gonna be honest. I will also tell you, I'm a big fan of Jumanji, and this is Star Trek Jumanji.
mm.
Kind of is if you think about it, in a reverse kind of way.
Will Robin Williams come out of the screen?
Wouldn't
Maybe?
that be great? Did you know Robin Williams was supposed to be in Star Trek?
Mm.
That's an episode for a future time, but that was going to be the episode with Matt Frewer in TNG.
Yes.
That was supposed to be Robin Williams.
Berlinghoff Rasmussen.
But anyway, moving forward, next week or in 2 weeks, we will take a look at Move Along Home. Some argue as potentially the worst episode of DS9 and one of the worst episodes in Star Trek history. But we will take a look at it and judge it for ourselves. Brennan, where can the people find you?
You can find me on X or Brennan Mystical. Threads and Instagram at Brennan Blue. You can find me on Facebook and Blue Sky at Brennan Marr. And you can find this podcast on YouTube under the banner Page Turners They Were Not. And wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find me on Twitch and Twitter, counting to 4, then looking at other places, then 3 more. All right, this is terrible. I'm sorry.
Oh, boy.
I actually really do like this. But you can find me on Twitch and Twitter. See Ingle 1984. This is one of the first episodes I know he doesn't.
Couldn't it have given us Party on the Stars?
There are a couple. You know what? When that happens, that's going to be great. There are lots of great DS9 episodes. Even Q-less would have been nice.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good one. But we got to go with the randomizer. The randomizer beckons, and it doesn't always give us the greatest episodes. So today, or in 2 weeks, we'll take a look at Move Along Home and see what all the fuss is about. But as always, we end every episode, Qapla', and live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.